welcome to Russ's Kitchen. I've got a recipe here that is an absolute classic family favourite. It's my recipe for cottage pie. Let's have a look and see what we're going to be using in this wonderful, easy to do, simple recipe. First of all, obviously, we've got our beef. It's cottage pie, so we're using beef. If it was shepherd's pie, it would be lamb. Go to your butcher, get some really nice quality minced beef. I've got a small onion, or half a large onion if that's what you're using, carrot, Worcester sauce, about a tablespoon and a half of tomato puree, enough potatoes for your mashed potato topping. It depends on how big your dish is, how you're going to serve it up. That's going to determine how much mash you're going to need. About 30 grams of frozen peas, 400 mils of beef stock, and salt and pepper to flavour. And that's all you need for this amazing meal. So the first thing that we have to do is chop our onion and our carrot. So there's our carrot and our onion finely chopped. I've got a heavy based pan that's on a low to medium heat with just a drizzle of vegetable oil, and we're now going to put our vegetables into that just to sweat down, just so they get nice and soft. So I've got the vegetables in the pan, and I've got it on a really low heat, and they're just going to soften down. It's probably going to take about 15 minutes for these just to soften. There are lots of different recipes for cottage pie. The reason that I've settled on this particular recipe is because basically it's so easy and there aren't that many ingredients. You can probably think cottage pie, it's a great British classic. Well, sorry, I'm going to have to burst your bubble on that one, because the French also have a very similar recipe that emerged around towards the end of the 18th, early 19th century, which is actually bizarre because that's when some of the first recordings of cottage pie emerged in this country. Coincidence? I don't know. But there you go, a little bit of history there. And let's just sweat that down 15 minutes, and then we're going to add our other ingredients. So our vegetables are now softened down. I'm going to turn the heat right up, and we're going to put our minced beef in. And start to break that up. And we want to get some colour on this. And if there is any fat in the beef, we want to render that down as quickly as we can, so the beef isn't stewing, it's frying off and getting really nice colour. And that will just add to this wonderful flavour. So our beef has now got some colour on, and as you can see, it's now started to render out some of the fat that's in the beef mince. What I'm going to do is take some plain flour, just a little bit at a time, and just sprinkle that over our mixture. Give that a stir around and make sure that the flour is cooked out. And we're going to repeat that process until the mixture becomes a little bit drier. Don't put too much flour in at a time. The flour will also help thicken up the mixture and the gravy. And as you can see, that's started to dry out already. A little bit more flour. Just making sure that all the flour disappears. It really is quite important that we do cook the flour out. And as you can see, that's getting drier and drier. Maybe just one more little bit of flour. And that's soaked up all of that excess fat, which is really what we wanted to do. Great. So the next thing that we need to do is introduce our beef stock. Now I've got 400 mils of beef stock here. I'm not going to put all of it in. I'm just going to put maybe about half or a third, and we're going to reserve the rest of it back because this is now going to cook for about an hour, hour and a half, and we just want to make sure we've got some stock left just in case it starts to dry out. So that goes in. Also, on top of that, we've got our tomato puree. That's going to add a really nice sweet richness. Worcester sauce, just a little splash. And then we're going to season it with salt and pepper. Quite generous. I'm going to stir that round to make sure everything's nicely mixed in. And then we're going to leave that to cook. So I'm going to turn the heat right down to its lowest setting. I'm putting a lid on, and that is now going to cook away for at least an hour and a half. If you can leave it for longer, absolutely brilliant, because that flavour is just going to intensify the longer you cook it for. Just keep an eye on it every now and again to make sure that that stock isn't drying out. So our beef mixture is now being cooking for approximately an hour and a half. The gravy is now starting to thicken up, so that's wonderful. The smell is amazing. It's now time to put our potatoes on, ready for our mash. Our potatoes for our mash topping are done. At this point, we're going to put our peas into our mince mixture. Just give those a little stir around. We want to put them in quite late on because we don't want to overcook them. Back on with the lid. And then back to our mash topping. Now I'm going to start putting some butter into this mash topping. If I was using this as a side dish, I'd be putting lots of butter into it to make it creamy and really gorgeous. You don't want to do that when you're making the topping for a cottage pie. The reason behind that is because if you make it too creamy, all it's going to do is soak into the mixture and it's just going to not work. So we're not going to put as much butter as we normally would do. So let's get a decent knob of butter and start mashing it all down. There we go. Our potato mash topping for our pie is ready. So let's put it all together and make a gorgeous cottage pie. So our mixture is now going to go into our dish. And actually, the original name for this particular recipe, if you look back, is Saunders or Sanders. Now, apparently, you can still find references to that in cookbooks even now. I have no idea why it's called Saunders or Sanders, but that was before it became cottage pie or shepherd's pie. So there we go, there's our mixture, nice and even. I'm going to make sure I get as much of the gravy as I possibly can. And now it's time to top that off with beautiful mashed potato. So taking some, I'm going to start at this side and I'm going to go round the dish, not going to go from this side to this side. If you do that, you'll tend to end up with pushing the mixture all to one side. The other thing that we need to be careful of is to make sure that the mashed potato is sealed all the way around the dish. Now when we get to this stage, I'm going to take a fork, take the back of the fork, and I just want to run some lines across the mashed potato. That way we're going to get some really nice peaks that are going to crust up when we bake it. And as a little extra, just to be a bit indulgent, it's not traditional, but I think this just makes it so good. I've got some grated cheddar cheese and I'm just going to sprinkle that over the top. It's a bit indulgent, but it really does taste fantastic. Now that is going to go into a preheated oven at about 190 degrees. It's going to take about 25 minutes to half an hour to cook. Keep an eye on it and you're going to watch this turn into the most delicious cottage pie. And there you go. Homemade cottage pie. Easy to cook, not many ingredients, and it tastes absolutely amazing. Give it a try.